Next on the news, the Catholic Church rushing to keep 2 death row inmates from being executed. We'll show you what's being done. Also, why you may not be able to fly mask-free for long, the latest legal maneuver that could change everything. Plus, Pope Francis doing something he hasn't done in more than 2 years, greeting pilgrims in St. Peter's Square, and
it's something that he should have had when he got out, and now he has them.
A World War II veteran finally gets his medals more than 7 decades later. I'm Christine Persichetti. Current News starts right now. The Catholic Church trying to save the lives of 2 death row inmates. Both are set to be executed next week, but advocates are working overtime to stop that from happening.
She is terrorized right now. I mean, she is counting the days.
Melissa Lucio is making a last-ditch effort to postpone her execution. She's set to die next week on April 27th. The first Hispanic woman on death row was found guilty of killing her 2-year-old daughter in 2007. She insists the toddler fell down the stairs outside of the family's home in Texas. But after a 7-hour interrogation, the mother of 14 told investigators, "I guess I did it. I'm responsible." Sabrina Van Tassel directed a documentary about the case.
She wasn't guilty, so she decided to answer the questions without knowing, what the outcome would be. And so she basically gave up, and that's what she told me.
Bishops in Texas sent a letter to the state's Board of Pardons and Paroles, Governor Greg Abbott, and the district attorney advocating on Lucio's behalf, writing, "We are also fervently praying that clemency be granted to Miss Lucio, not solely because of the church's opposition to the death penalty and the inherent dignity of every human life, but also due to the mitigating circumstances surrounding her case." Meanwhile, another death penalty case in South Carolina has caught the attention of Catholic leaders. Richard Moore will be put to death by a firing squad next Friday, April 29th. The convicted murderer chose that option over the electric chair after being told lethal injection drugs are not available. In a statement, the Diocese of Charleston called the choice he had to make modern-day barbarism and went on to say, "Respect for life is and must remain unconditional. This principle applies to all, even the perpetrators of terrible acts." Pope Francis has spoken out against the death penalty several times.
Per quanto grave possa essere stato il reato commesso, la pena di morte è inammissibile perché attenta all'inviolabilità e dignità della persona.
A South Carolina law passed last year made the electric chair the state's primary method for execution since lethal injection drugs are hard to obtain. But it also gave prisoners the option to choose a firing squad. In court records, Richard Moore disagreed with the requirement to make that decision, calling both options unconstitutional. Federal officials are threatening to take over control of Rikers Island from New York City, citing mismanagement by Mayor Eric Adams' administration. The feds say a takeover is likely unless changes are made quickly. The prison has recently been plagued with worsening violence. Workers at the facility say they're concerned for their safety. 3 inmates have died at Rikers so far this year. A wild shootout in Queens captured on surveillance video. It happened in broad daylight Tuesday afternoon in St. Albans. You can see the men exchange gunfire at close range. Amazingly, no one was hurt. One of the men is seen driving away from the scene in a silver Honda. He then returns to pick up some belongings he dropped. The NYPD is still trying to identify the suspects involved in the shootout. The UN Secretary General calling for a 4-day humanitarian pause in fighting in Ukraine. Antonio Guterres asked for it to start on Thursday to coincide with Holy Week observances for Orthodox Christians. Guterres says with a renewed offensive by Russia in eastern Ukraine, the need for a pause is all the more urgent. He says it will allow for the evacuation of civilians and help in getting humanitarian aid to areas that need it most. Meanwhile, the fighting in the besieged city of Mariupol is intensifying. A Ukrainian commander is calling it a critical situation. Russia also tested a new long-range missile that is nuclear capable. As Gloria Pazmino reports, the pressure is now on the U.S. and NATO to provide more military assistance.
Mariupol takes its last stand.
We might have only a few days or even hours left.
The southern port city is besieged as Russian forces move forward. While thousands of residents seek shelter, the Ukrainian army is pleading for help as they continue to resist Russian attacks.
The enemy's units are 10 times larger than ours. We appeal to the world leaders to help us.
The mayor of Mariupol asked residents to evacuate the city Wednesday. In the meantime, a route is being set up near a steel factory where thousands of civilians and Ukrainian soldiers are believed to be taking shelter. A Ukrainian military commander says strikes by Russian aviation and heavy artillery are continuing.
The Mariupol military garrison has over 500 wounded soldiers and hundreds of civilians, among whom there are children and women.
While it's still early in Russia's shift toward an offensive in the Donbas region, two senior U.S. officials say there has been no major territorial gains for Russia so far. Still, pressure is mounting on the U.S. and NATO to provide additional military assistance and help with evacuations.
The Ukrainians have been trying for a number of days to negotiate a safe passage for civilians and for wounded fighters. There will be NATO allies involved in that, is my understanding.
Gloria Pazmino, Current News.
An international charity has approved a special emergency relief package to help Latin Rite nuns in Lviv. Aid to the Church in Need says the relief will go to nuns who have opened their doors to refugees fleeing the war. It was not disclosed how much the relief package was worth, but the charity says the Benedictine nuns of Sri Lanka are among the recipients. Since the war broke out in February, the Sri Lanka sisters have welcomed hundreds of families in need. Border agents in Mexico are quitting their jobs ahead of the lifting of Title 42 by the U.S. They say they're concerned about being overworked and about migrants who are becoming more violent in their efforts to cross the border into the U.S. Title 42 is set to be lifted next month. It's a Trump-era health code that allows for the quick deportation of asylum seekers over concerns about the spread of COVID-19. That influx of migrants causing thousands to set up camp at the border. The so-called tent city is a moment of respite for the weary travelers while they wait for their chance to enter into the U.S. and seek asylum. Jacob Rescone reports.
Families are running to see if they can get on the bus. They are desperate to get out of this tent city. Look at how many hundreds of people, but they're told they can only get on the bus and go to the shelter. Where do you live? 2,000 migrants who've been expelled after trying to cross the U.S.-Mexico border now live in this giant tent city in Reynosa, Mexico, all waiting for Title 42 to be dropped so that they can again attempt to cross and ask for asylum. They come from Central America, Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador, but also Haiti, Brazil, Venezuela, and beyond. A record number of migrants are crossing the border, and now Border Patrol and other agents are preparing for a huge increase once Title 42 is dropped just next month.
That was Jacob Rescone reporting. Customs and Border Protection has released a 16-page report detailing its plan to deal with the unprecedented influx. They include adding agents and optimizing resources. A New Jersey diocese has announced plans to establish a trust that will compensate survivors of sexual abuse. It will be funded with nearly $88 million from the Diocese of Camden. The settlement also includes maintaining or enhancing the protocols for the protection of children, which were first implemented by the diocese in 2002 after the Dallas Charter. In a statement, the Bishop of the Diocese of Camden, Bishop Dennis Sullivan, said he is pleased the settlement represents the interests of 300 survivors. I want to express my sincere apology to all those who have been affected by sexual abuse in our diocese. My prayers go out to all survivors of abuse, and I pledge my continuing commitment to ensure that this terrible chapter in the history of the Diocese of Camden, New Jersey, never happens again. There's a lot more news headed your way. You might want to keep your mask in your carry-on when you catch your next flight, why the rules might change again. Plus, it was an inferno that could be seen from space, why investigators say a man set the fire and took off. And a woman on a train platform loses her balance. Wait until you see what happens next. Flying mask-free might not last too long. The Department of Justice says it could appeal a federal judge's ruling that struck down the Biden administration's transportation mask mandate. As Amy Kiley reports, the DOJ wants to let the CDC decide what happens next.
It's over immediately. Congratulations.
Actually, the battle over the federal public transportation mask mandate might not be over yet. The Justice Department says it's deferring to the CDC about appealing a federal judge's ruling that struck down the measure Monday.
Should people continue to wear masks on planes?
That's up to them.
The CDC had wanted the mandate in place until at least May 3rd, while it determined if it was still needed.
It's a horrible time to lift the mandate.
Experts say it's important to remember COVID-19 is still deadly.
Omicron has killed about 150,000 people. In an average year with a seasonal virus like the flu, we lose somewhere between 30 to 50,000 people.
Officials say a new sublineage of BA2 spreads about 25% faster than the original subvariant. Together, they make up almost all new COVID-19 cases in the U.S. Experts also point out people can't always social distance when traveling together.
If someone's not wearing a mask, even if you're wearing a very high quality mask like this, an N95 mask, they're infected. You have about an hour and 15 minutes of protection.
But people who aren't health experts might be considering other factors.
I feel more protected when people are wearing masks, though the enforcement of it causes a lot of antagonistic situations.
I'm looking forward to seeing a lot more smiles.
I'm Amy Kiley reporting.
COVID-19 may be loosening its grip on the U.S. A new forecast from the CDC finds that less than 10,000 additional deaths from the virus in the U.S. are predicted over the next month. That's the lowest that number has been so far this year. Health officials also say the COVID hospitalization rate over the next few weeks is likely to either hold steady or face an uncertain trend. With the summer driving season right around the corner and the war in Ukraine raging on, gas prices across the country are creeping up again. According to GasBuddy.com, the national average for a gallon of gas is $4.13. That's up from $4.06 compared to the start of this week. The Big Apple is seeing an uptick as well. The average price for a gallon in New York City is now $4.18. Catholics are celebrating a series of pro-life wins as several states pass a wave of new laws restricting abortions. This as the country awaits a critical Supreme Court ruling on the issue later this year. Jessica Schneider reports.
There you go.
Florida, now the third state, along with Arizona and Kentucky, to ban most abortions after 15 weeks.
This will represent the most significant protections for life that have been enacted in this state in a generation.
And in Oklahoma,
this is what democracy looks like.
Protests flared after lawmakers approved a near total ban on abortion.
We want to outlaw abortion in the state of Oklahoma.
Oklahoma's new law makes performing an abortion a felony, punishable by up to 10 years in state prison, a fine of up to $100,000, or both, with no exceptions for rape or incest. Last year, the Supreme Court refused to step in to stop a Texas law that bans most abortions after about 6 weeks of pregnancy, allowing private citizens to sue to enforce the law. In response, at least 8 other states moved to enact similar bills, with Idaho becoming the first to implement a so-called heartbeat bill, since it bans most abortions after a fetal heartbeat is detected.
Oh yay, oh yay, oh yay.
The Supreme Court is now poised to issue what could be its most consequential decision on abortion in nearly 50 years. The justices will issue a ruling by the end of June on a Mississippi law that bans most abortions after 15 weeks. If the Supreme Court lets the law stand, which states like Florida, Arizona, and Kentucky are betting it will, that would gut the precedent set by Roe v. Wade and Casey that the Constitution protects a woman's right to abortion, and that right is protected from most state interference before 23 or 24 weeks. It's also possible the Supreme Court could strike down Roe v. Wade completely, clearing the way for states to ban abortion outright.
That was Jessica Schneider reporting. Following the signing of the bills, Florida's Catholic bishops praised Governor Ron DeSantis for his, quote, commitment to defend unborn children and their mothers. A suspect now facing charges in a devastating fire that could be seen from space. A Home Depot in San Jose, California was set on fire earlier this month. It destroyed the building and caused over $17 million in damages. The suspect, Dylan J. Cruz Gog, is charged with 7 counts of grand theft and 3 counts of petty theft on top of an aggravated arson charge. According to the Santa Clara DA's office, Gog was on a crime spree April 9th, stealing from a Bass Pro Shop before making his way to Home Depot.
Lit the fire in the Home Depot and tried to leave the store with a cart containing stolen tools. He was stopped by a Home Depot employee and fled in another person's car.
As the store was burning to the ground, the DA says Gog then continued his stealing spree at a nearby Macy's. Thankfully, no one was killed or injured. Police arrested Gog on April 15th, just 2 weeks after the fire. Secret Service officers in Washington, D.C. shot and killed an intruder who they say broke into the ambassador's residence at the Peruvian embassy. It happened just after 8 a.m. Wednesday. Officers say they found broken windows at the rear of the house and a suspect in the backyard holding a metal stake. According to police, the agents shot the man after first trying to subdue him with tasers. There were no other reported injuries, and right now police are trying to determine a motive. It is video you have to see to believe. A woman in Argentina survives after falling under a train. You can see the woman seems to lose her balance and falls toward the train. She disappears between the cars and slips down to the tracks, but miraculously she was rescued by the station security. She was taken to the hospital where she was treated for several injuries. Unbelievable. Still to come on Currents News, the Pope with the people. What Francis did today that he hasn't done in more than 2 years. And why this World War II veteran waited nearly 80 years to get his medals. For the first time in more than 2 years, Pope Francis kicked off his Wednesday audience riding the Pope Mobile through St. Peter's Square. Greeting thousands of pilgrims, the Pope rode around waving and occasionally stopping to kiss babies. During the audience itself, the pontiff continued his series on the importance of the elderly, urging parents to strengthen the relationships between their children and the elderly. Romans, get your cake and candles ready. It's Rome's birthday this weekend. It's a big one. As Kelsey Gussie reports, this year, the Italian capital will mark 2,775 years since it was founded by Romulus and Remus.
On April 21st, the city of Rome turns 2,775 years old. According to Sergio Iacomoni, president of the Roman Historical Group, celebrating Rome's birthday is more than just commemorating a city.
Celebrating the birth of Rome is like celebrating something similar to a reawakening, to a different way of living and thinking.
Iacomoni founded the Roman Historical Group in 1994. The initial goal was to create a space where people with a common passion for history and ancient Rome could come together. But he quickly discovered it wasn't just people in Rome who shared that passion.
Little by little, our numbers grew. There are lots of people who share this passion. Strangely enough, not just in Italy or in Europe, but all over the world. For example, we have lots of fans in Australia, New Zealand, Russia, the United States, and even Latin America.
The group celebrates the city's birthday every year by showcasing the impact of Roman life and culture on both the ancient world and the world today.
We don't just celebrate a city, we celebrate an ideal, a way of life, a different way of living that originated in Rome. It's true that Rome created a lot of problems for several nations, but it's also true that it changed the lives of many people. It created a legal system and laws. It invented road building and provided water supplies. It initiated a different lifestyle.
For the last 28 years, the Roman Historical Group has been celebrating Rome's founding with events that mark traditional Roman culture. These include processions through the city's historic center and reenactments of gladiatorial combat. The celebration demonstrates that after almost 3,000 years, all roads still lead to Rome.
That was Kelsey Gussie reporting. If you're lucky enough to be in the Eternal City for the big birthday, all city-run museums will be open free of charge. The celebratory events also include guided tours, special exhibitions, and theatrical performances. A new exhibit is taking a closer look at how an Italian diocese helped Jewish people during the Holocaust. The presentation, which ran at a temple in New Rochelle and at St. John's University, is titled Museum of Memory. It focuses on how the Diocese of Assisi saved every Jewish person within its borders during World War II. Some 4,000 Jews had fled to Assisi, and immediately the head bishop there formed a working committee to keep them safe, placing 300 Jews in convents and monasteries, giving them food and clothes. He even hid their religious objects in the basement of his own residence. Curator of the museum, Marina Rosati, who's being translated here by Monsignor Anthony Figueiredo of Assisi, gives us a look into one of the places the Jews stayed while in Assisi.
Cosa accadde? Il vescovo chiese alla
What actually happened? Remember, these were cloistered convents, so no one could enter them. And the Bishop Nicolini, asked the superiors of these convents to take the Jews in because no one could gain access. But we do see in these last images of the convent of San Quirico the bunkers, because on at least 3 different occasions the Nazis attempted to enter San Quirico, but in these bunkers the Jews were hidden and saved.
The exhibit was sponsored by the Pave the Way Foundation, an organization which helps promote interfaith understanding. Israel's official memorial to victims of the Holocaust, Yad Vashem, has recognized 7 heroes of Assisi as righteous among nations. Vatican archivist Johann Ix is releasing some of his findings on the work of Pope Pius XII to help the Jewish people during World War II. In 2020, the Vatican revealed secret documents on the pontiff, who was under scrutiny for not doing enough to stop the slaughter of Jews during the war. Ix says some 2,800 Jews wrote to the Pope directly, and each one was responded to by the Vatican Secretary of State. Pope Pius also had the Secretariat of State write letters to bishops throughout Europe, telling them they had to do whatever they could to support the Jews. 15,000 Jews from all over Europe sent requests for help to the Vatican, and a bureau inside the Holy See followed all of these requests. False baptismal certificates were even made in St. Peter's to save Jewish babies. Overall, Ix says this gives a completely different picture of Pope Pius XII and his direct entourage during these years. He even described them as the best friends of the Jews. Nearly 80 years after he got out of the Navy, a World War II veteran from Maine has finally been honored for his service.
I figured that I earned them.
Meet Navy veteran Perry Drew. He was just 18 years old when he was drafted into the service. And by the time the war ended, he was so anxious to get home, he never went to pick up his medals. It was a simple mistake his daughter and son-in-law wanted to fix.
We told them that he was on hospice and he had pulmonary fibrosis and gave them the records. It was probably within a couple months that Susan Collins' office expedited and got the medals to us.
It's something that he should have had when he got out, and now he has them, and it makes us feel extremely proud.
While Drew is thankful for the medals, he says one thing that always makes him proud is taking part in his local Memorial Day parade. And we thank him for his service. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us, because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.